Welcome to the Power Your Life radio show with host and success doc Joanne White. Author, speaker, certified coach, and energy master, Doc White gets to the heart of what matters most. She features guests and experts to help you consciously create more success, health, and wellness in every area of your life, work, and relationships. They'll share their success stories, wisdom, and know-how to help you shine more light onto your day and into your life. Power your life right now. Here's Joanne White.
Hello, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us on Power Your Life, and I'm Dr. Joanne White, and it's a pleasure to be here. Hope everybody's doing well. And, you know, it's really important to take care of ourselves. Self-care, sometimes we take care of other people, we neglect taking care of ourselves, but it's really very important, especially when we're going through grief or sadness or other kinds of times. It's really, again, something that we need to do. It's not really selfish. A lot of people think, oh, that's selfish. It's not selfish. It's about being able to take care of yourself, one, so you can be healthy and feel good and go about your life, but also to help other people as well, because if you don't have that energy and that health and that support for yourself, you're not able to give that to anybody else. So I have a wonderful guest. Her name is Annie McDonnell, and she is going to talk a lot about all of that. She's an acupuncturist, a sound healing practitioner, as well as a grief guide. Annie teaches self-care practices that can nurture tender hearts and cultivate resilience, through the power of gentleness. She believes that your grief is worthy of tender care and attention, and I definitely agree. Annie's virtual sessions are tailored to help you get unstuck, tune into your creativity, as well as reconnect to your inner calm. You can learn practical tips that can free yourself from both anxiety and grief, as well as other chronic conditions. And she has a grief circle, which Annie will talk about, and also offers one-on-one grief care sessions. Annie, how are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And it's so important for people to take care of themselves during loss, and some of what you're doing really helps people to do just that. So can you talk about that a little bit, and we'll get further into what's going on with you?
Yeah, definitely. And I'd just like to let people know, too, that grief can feel like a very heavy, sad topic, and obviously there is sadness there, but grief can also include great love and happy memories and an ongoing connection to a loved one. And there can also be, moments of humor and sometimes dark humor. But I thank everyone for being willing to go down this path with both of us and open up the conversation. Because grief is a universal experience. It will touch every one of us in multiple ways over our lifetimes. And yet, it's so rarely talked about openly, and it just makes it harder for all of us because we're not getting the support that we need. We're feeling extra alone and misunderstood. So I thank everyone for being willing to open up to this topic.
It's so important what you say, because, a lot of people grieve by themselves, and they can't really talk about it, and other people may feel uncomfortable talking about it with them. So it is a sticky topic for people, but what you said is so wonderful. So I have a question, because grief, is not just emotional. It can affect other aspects of ourselves. Can you share that with, what that means with our audience?
Oh, Yes, definitely. I think that's one of the most misunderstood things about grief is people think it's just an emotion or it's just sadness. And in terms of emotions, it's actually a whole kaleidoscope of emotions beyond sadness. It can include guilt and shame and anger and longing and joy and love and the whole human experience. And then, obviously, our minds and our hearts are part of our bodies. We're, embodied human beings experiencing our emotions in our bodies. So when we're feeling grief, it can affect our digestion. It's very common for people to either lose their appetite or do extra emotional eating. It affects the nervous system. When I went through a period of several years where my parents were getting older and having health crisis after health crisis, and I had 4 senior pets who were also having health emergency after a health emergency. And through that period, it was hard to find a single night where I could sleep through the night because I was listening to my dog's breathing to see if I needed to give him medicine or rush him to the animal ER. I was jumping when I got a text message because I didn't know if it was going to be my sister telling me one of my parents was rushed to the hospital. So people don't realize that you can be so actively in fight or flight that you're not getting the deep rest that we all need to stay healthy. And your grief deeply impacts your basic sense of safety in the world. If you can watch someone you love physically deteriorate, you start thinking about your own health and what the future might hold. You start fearing what it will mean to lose them, how it could affect you in many different ways. So it's very physically destabilizing where you are in either a fight or flight response where you're constantly getting stress hormones pumped through your system, or maybe you're so burnt out that you're in a freeze response and you just feel like you have no clue what to do next, and you're just easily overwhelmed by everything being thrown at you. And then also I can really touch on every system in the body of how it could be impacted by grief, and everyone will experience it in their own way. Each person has kind of their physical weak spots that is usually affected first. But another huge one that we're starting to get some more good research on this, but in terms of the way the brain is affected, they're starting to do brain scans that you can physically see on the scan that someone is going through acute grief, where it's almost like a traumatic brain injury.
Wow.
Because we have all these, the closer you are to someone, whether it be, your pet who's always by your side throughout the day, or whether it be a parent or a partner or your best friend of 40 years, the closer we are to someone, the more neural pathways we have that include that person. And, there are deep grooves through the mind. It's how we understand the world. Each one of us has sort of a mental map of the world that's not just where we are in space and time, but also where we are in terms of our connections with the key people who we're most emotionally connected to. So when that goes away, again, it just throws your brain into kind of disarray, because to get through the day, we do so much kind of unconscious patterns and predictions, because otherwise we'd just be overwhelmed by figuring out what to do when. So we kind of run on these routines, and then when you lose someone so close to you, your brain has to figure out every new, I'm in the supermarket, I normally get, my partner's favorite ketchup. and then you're in the supermarket and you're hit by the awareness, oh my gosh, I'm reaching for this ketchup and I don't need it anymore. And that's why it's so common and understandable for people to have these seemingly random waves of grief, because your understanding of the world it takes a lot of mental energy for the brain to process this, and it can take way longer than I think people think it should take or hope it would take. And then also connected to the brain, when you're, say you have a beloved pet, you're constantly snuggling with them, petting them, and so your brain is releasing oxytocin and the bonding hormones, the feel-good hormones, the stress-relieving hormones. So your brain is used to these biochemicals that you get as a reward for the loving relationships that you experience in the world. So when you're not able to, hug your partner in the morning or have your pet warm on your lap, that is something that you feel physically as well as emotionally. So I just want people to help understand what they're going through so that they can give themselves grace and give other people grace too. As, it's not just like we lose someone, we go to a funeral, and then a week or two later, everyone should be, back to normal. It's a very long process of making sense of the world and kind of recalibrating, just kind of like everything that made you feel safe.
It's so very important, and I'm glad that you said that, because, and I always say to my clients that grief doesn't have a time frame, that it's very individual, and because I once spoke with somebody who said that her friend said, okay, it's time, get over it, and you can't do that if you're going through everything that you're describing, Annie. It's just so intense. When I was taking care of my mother, I was exhausted. I was her caregiver. I was totally exhausted, and when she passed for a little while, I felt totally numb. I mean, I had to work, but I just felt like I was just going through the motions without, feeling for a while, that numbness. So I'm so glad that you described things the way that you did, because it's important. And like you said, we should give ourselves grace, because everybody grieves in their own time and grieves differently, and it's okay, and don't feel badly about it, right? That's so important.
Yeah, and that's one of the uncomfortable things about grief also, is that because we don't necessarily understand that everyone grieves differently, and some people you can feel so emotionally raw when you're in an acute grief that you don't have extra emotional energy to maybe have the normal social niceties that you would when you were feeling a little bit more like yourself. But so what can happen too is that if a parent dies, each sibling may experience that loss in a different way and a different time frame, different coping mechanisms, and then you can start to have clashes with people because you're wanting them to show up in a certain way. So it can be, that's why I encourage people also to consider looking for support from maybe a neutral party, someone who has some experience with grief, whether it be a best friend who's a little more outside the situation, or a professional, or, like an online grief circle or something, just because you can struggle with the pain of not getting the support that you need from, say, your partner or your brother or sister or your best friend, because either they're experiencing the grief differently and don't have extra energy to give you for the emotional support that you need, or they just don't have the capacity to understand what it is that you need. So that can be like an extra layer of complication where you just feel such pain of disappointment that, the people that you thought might show up to support you can't for whatever reason.
And I think that's so true. And also, I've noticed from people is grief is a touchy subject. So let's say somebody is grieving, a friend or a family member is grieving. People feel uncomfortable, talking about it, and maybe not them, but the people around them, or maybe afraid to bring it up or not knowing what to say, and it gets a little sticky too. I want you to share with our listeners how you got into this in the first place. Is there a backstory for you?
Well, it's been like a long, winding journey, as life tends to be. I'll give a couple points that kind of led me down this path of being a acupuncturist and then a grief guide. Actually, the very first time I got acupuncture myself was in the months after 9/11. I was working in New York City at that time. I was there that day, and I've had asthma my whole life. But in the months after 9/11, the air quality was horrific. And my asthma was really getting scary, and I didn't want to go on a long-term steroid medication. I wanted to see what I could do to support myself physically first. So luckily I knew of someone who knew of an acupuncturist nearby, and I had been curious about it, and I thought, what, I have nothing to lose. I know it's safe, even if it may not. I don't know if it'll be effective, but I know there are no dangerous side effects or anything, so let me give it a try. And it was amazing where, within a matter of, I think it was 6 or 8 weeks that I went, and my asthma improved, and I didn't need to go on any long-term medication. But what was most amazing to me was that I also discovered that it emotionally made me feel a lot better too. I was going through the shock and grief and trauma of experiencing 9/11 as a New Yorker, and acupuncture has a way of tapping into the nervous system and sending signals that it is safe, that you can turn off this fight or flight response. It is safe to relax, to be in your body, to slow down, to give yourself rest. And I didn't know this at the time, but each acupuncture point in the classical system has not just physical functions, but also emotional and even sometimes almost spiritual correlations. So it was a very powerful experience that stuck with me, and it didn't make me say, oh, let me run out and be an acupuncturist, but it planted a seed, and I did start to read more about it and study some herbal medicine. And then years later, I had the experience of the very first cat that I adopted on my own as an adult, who at too young of an age, she had cancer that was very quick moving. It was very, from her diagnosis to her death was just 2 or 3 months. And she was so dear to my heart. She was my baby. She was, the first baby that I had on my own. So to help her, I did some natural remedies as well through a holistic vet. But unfortunately, it had progressed too far to save her. But during that time period, I learned some kind of basic hospice care to keep her comfortable at home, and that involved, sticking her with needles to give her subcutaneous fluids, and it was stuff that I had never imagined myself doing, but I did it out of love for her. And so it both showed me that I was more capable than I believed that I was, and it also showed me that even though it was such a heart-wrenching experience, it was incredibly emotionally satisfying to give that level of care to someone who was so dear to me. So it just, again, like led me in this direction of could this be a way to help people? And knowing what I know, and I've made it through this experience, how can I carry what I know forward to help other people? So some years went by after that, and I finally figured out that acupuncture school was right for me, and I figured out a way to go to grad school full-time while I was working full-time, and all of the, practical details. And then not long after I graduated from acupuncture school is when I hit this season of life where my parents were starting to deteriorate health-wise. And I mentioned before I had 4 senior pets who I was juggling. So that kind of led me deeper into studying grief and the different ways to support yourself through grief and to support other people through grief. And I've continued to go down this path because I just feel like it is, grief at its core is about love. And what's more profound than that? So if I can help people not bypass their grief, but lean into it so that they can feel that love alongside the pain and help to soften the pain over time and increase their level of love and connection to what's at the core.
I think that's so important because, yes, love is there and love is so important. And when we're losing, whether it's pets or people that we love, even though they're gone, the love isn't gone. The love lives on, mm-hmm. and that's still so very, very wonderful. So what is a grief care session?
Well, I created grief care sessions, again, with the idea that there's not enough support around, and especially for caretakers. Like when you were caretaking your mom, millions of people are doing that right now and trying to juggle their job, maybe take care of children, and become like a parent to their own parent, which is a very emotional experience as well as a physically taxing experience. So I made the sessions just 30 minutes with the idea that maybe this can be kind of like a quick, find 30 minutes in your day to help get an energy boost and just feel supported so that you can all the difficult decisions that you have to make that day with a clear mind and an open heart. So grief care is very flexible depending on what people need in that moment. Over the 30 minutes, we may do some breathing exercises together. If people need to talk, I'm someone who can listen without judgment and with compassion and maybe offer a perspective to help you understand what's going on and why it makes sense that you feel the way that you do, rather than, if you're judging yourself of why you're feeling a certain way, I can explain why it makes sense, which can sometimes make a situation feel a little lighter. And then I can also offer practices from my experience as I did a training in grief movement using sound, breath, and gentle physical movement and stretches to help move some emotion through, because you don't always have to talk about what's going on. You can lean into what your body's feeling and not overthink it, but get into your body and use sound and movement to just kind of get some emotions gently flowing and releasing. And then I offer like EFT tapping. There's a whole range of these little practices that you can do that can make a difference in helping your nervous system feel more regulated and just helping your heart feel a little bit lighter.
And that's really important because we really need to take care of ourselves during these times and being able to find ways to do that. So you talk about tips that people can use to free themselves from anxiety or grief or other kinds of conditions, chronic conditions. Can you tell us a little bit about what some tips are?
Yeah, one of my very favorites. And again, so, some of these things can sound very simple, and that actually is helpful, because when you're in fight or flight or freeze, you can't overwhelm yourself more by doing like a 20-minute perfect morning routine to start your day, or, sometimes you need something kind of like down and dirty that you can do in the 5 minutes while you're like brewing your tea or your coffee. So one of my favorite tips that's your own sound healing is just to spend a couple minutes, humming. So what that does physically, when you hum, multiple things are happening. It stimulates the release of something called nitric oxide in your body, which is a natural vasodilator, so that can help lower your blood pressure. It can also stimulate a nerve called the vagus nerve that is the longest nerve in the body that helps to regulate your breathing, affects your digestion, affects your heart rate as well, affects almost every system in the body in one way or another. So just the vibration from humming stimulates the vagus nerve in a positive way to help it, again, like feel safe enough to go into the rest and digest mode rather than the fight or flight mode. So that's on a physical level. But then if you layer in the emotional level, sound and music is very emotionally powerful. I think everyone understands that on a visceral level as they, listen to their favorite song or listen to sad music versus, a rock anthem. So, if you're humming to yourself as a way to maybe even distract yourself from a difficult moment, knowing that this is going to help your nervous system to regulate itself a little bit without thinking about it too much. But, you can just hum like, you can just hum random notes, or you could start humming a favorite song or maybe even a lullaby that you find soothing. So you can start to bring in some emotions connected to that song to help move some emotions. Maybe, if you're feeling kind of really tense and pent up, maybe you do need a good cry. So maybe humming a sad song will help those tears to just kind of well up naturally, and that in itself can be a healthy stress release. And that also, that humming will start to change your breathing pattern. If you make your exhale longer than your inhale, that again starts to help your body to relax. And when your body is relaxed, it's easier for your mind and your heart to relax, and vice versa.
That's such great advice, humming, and it's simple, and it's not expensive, and it's utilizing your own source within you to do that. I also like to do movement because that helps me unstuck. And, whatever works, and I think that's the bottom line. Everybody's different, like you said, Annie. Whatever can help people to move out of those trying times of grief or other kinds of conditions is really beautiful and so very, very important. Tell people what acupuncture is, because I don't know that everybody knows what it is. They know the name, but they don't know what's involved in it.
Sure. Acupuncture has been around for thousands of years. It was developed as part of traditional Chinese medicine. So I think anything that lasts for thousands of years probably has stuck around for a reason. The Chinese medicine views human beings holistically as mind, body, and spirit, and that every system within the body is connected to everything else. So we're not just dealing with isolated symptoms. We're looking for whole body patterns. And there's some very interesting connections. And modern research is finding more and more, like, why is it that people with asthma may tend to have eczema more often? Like, the bodily systems are linked in ways that are still being discovered in modern research, but ancient Chinese medicine kind of saw these links many, many years ago. So acupuncture itself is using sterile single-use needles, and the needles are just about the size of a human hair, so they're very, very thin. Sometimes you don't even feel them. Using needles in specific points of the body that the acupuncture points are all over the body. There are some points that are used quite frequently that do a range of different things, but the points partly work through helping to send signals through the nervous system, and then also people may not be aware, but there's a system in our body called fascia, and that's the connective tissue that's around all our internal organs and all our muscles. So this fascia is kind of like connecting the whole body, and there's a fluid flow, this cellular fluid flows through this fascial network. If anyone has had like a lymphatic massage, they might have experienced kind of some fascial release. Sometimes physical therapists do like myofascial release techniques. So the acupuncture needles can also tap into this fascia to help release tension, to release any sort of like muscle knots that may be constricting blood flow, impeding muscle function. It works on many different levels. And as I said before, it also can work to support emotions too, because it is helping it's really helping your body tap into its own healing wisdom. That, when we do allow ourselves to fall into this space of deep rest and relaxation, Western medicine calls it like the relaxation response, then our body's inherent wisdom can direct more blood flow and more resources rather than just like in the survival mode. It can direct more resources towards cellular repair, towards digestion, and all the processes that keep us functioning smoothly.
And that, again, it's so important. Somebody can hear the word needles and get like, oh, needles. But as you described, and I've had acupuncture, Annie, it doesn't hurt, and they're so small, but yet they're powerful in terms of what they do and how they can help people in their healing process on many different levels. So, yes, I agree. Tell our listeners how they can get a hold of you, find out more about what you do, about your grief circle that you do on a monthly basis, and also your grief care sessions, and how to get a hold of you.
Sure. My website is joyalchemyhealing.com. I'm sure there'll be links in the underneath the program, wherever you're listening. If you're on Instagram, I'm at Acupuncture Annie, and there are links in my bio there that you can sign up for the grief circle or a grief care session, or just get a little more familiar with my work and what it is that I do. I'd also like to offer people, if you find me on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn or through my website, I have a free guide towards anticipatory grief that offers 10 practical tips to help yourself support yourself if you are in a caregiving situation, or a loved one has just had a scary diagnosis and you're wondering how to have some hard conversations, how to support them and support yourself and keep your energy up. So I'd love to share that free guide with anyone who wants to download it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. What would you like to leave our listeners with before we close?
I'd love for people to understand that grief is not a competition or a comparison. So your grief is your grief. You don't have to try and minimize it because it was just this or just that, or that person has more reason to grieve than you. Your grief is mysterious and beautiful and all your own, and it's worthy of your tender care and attention with no shame, no judgment, and that as you go through the grieving process, the pain will lessen and you can feel more joy and more love in the connection that is at the root of that grief.
Beautiful. So very, very important, Annie, because, again, we don't need to compare ourselves to somebody else who's grieving or a time frame or anything like that. So that's so beautiful. Thank you so much for all that you do and all that you are, Annie McDonnell, and have a beautiful day.
Thank you, you too, and thank you everyone who listened in.
Take care.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you. So think about what Annie said, because, again, it's important to take care of yourself during times of grief, during times of loss, during times when you're going through some difficult moments, and you really need to, again, it could even be anxiety, you really need to take care of yourself so that you can go forward. And it doesn't last forever, doesn't have to, and there are techniques, as Annie described, that can really help you move forward and feel more empowered and feel good about who you are, and also retain, and Annie McDonnell said that beautifully, the love and the source of love, which is beautiful. So think about that. Be gentle with yourself, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and remember, you are worthy of care, and you need to take care of yourself in whatever way that you can, and start doing that today. Have a beautiful day, and remember, you are important, and it's time to value who you are and what you do.
You've been listening to the Power Your Life radio show with host and author Dr. Joanne White. Listen often and spread the word about the upbeat show to enrich you and grow your life in the direction you desire. Listen again and again, and visit docwhite.org for more information and find out how Dr. Joanne can benefit you. Thank you for sharing your day with us, and stay tuned for more exciting guests and events to come.